so let us begin.
Okay.
You can totally be as honest as you want. That's the goal. If you could tell me your name and where you're from.
My name is Taylor Tilton, and I am from Virginia.
Awesome. So if you could give like a genuine, honest answer of how you're doing today, that'd be cool.
How am I doing today? I had an okay day. I work for a small business. I work for a local coffee shop, so I work there full time. So it's difficult right now with the climate we're in with COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Hard. I'm very involved with the family who owns the store, and so I feel like the weight of the economic burden that's happening right now, because I'm so closely involved with a small business. So work just means a different thing to me than it used to before all of this happened. So I had like a good day at work. I'm probably over caffeinated. But yeah, it was okay. It's hard to, I guess, ever feel like I can never like mentally check out of this pandemic, you know, because I'm so involved in a business. Yeah, so that's all that I think I carry that with me all the time. So work used to be this like very fun, easy thing, and now I go and I'm like, God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could tell me where you are in your mental health journey right now.
I think I'm doing okay. I think everyone right now is probably having a really hard time, even people who maybe aren't diagnosed with any kind of mental illness, just because it's a very isolated, very strange time to be a human being at all. So right now I'm really, really trying to be on top of my shit, because I have some fucked up brain stuff. So I'm like really trying to be like anal about it. So yeah, but I feel okay. I feel like I have a pretty good handle on it.
Yeah.
Considering that like the world ended, I'm all right.
That's awesome. So next question is, can you tell me when the last time you cried was?
When was the last time I cried? God, I don't even know. Last week, I guess. I used to cry like 4 times a day, like really cry. That was like a year ago. I was crying like every single day, multiple times a day, and like all through high school, and like 18 to 22. I didn't go to college, but like that time when I was supposed to be in school, I would cry like maybe for like the last 8 years of my life. I cried like 3 or 4 times a day. And this last year, I've like really gotten my shit together in regards to like actively trying to surround myself in my life with things that like don't make me cry 4 times a day. So that's actually wild that I like don't really remember the last time I cried.
Yeah.
Because I used to cry constantly. Like I would joke that I like never had to buy makeup remover, because I would just like cry it off, which is so sad. And like I love crying. Crying's great. It's just awesome to not have like body racking sobs multiple times a day. So I think maybe last week. That's crazy. Yeah.
I think that's interesting to like. I don't know if you like noticed it mentally, but like the fact that you were like here a couple years ago and then you're here now, like, you know, the difference. Crazy.
Big difference. Yeah, for sure.
Crazy how like much progress we can make, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
And that like so much hope too, because like fuck, in like 8 years, like how much more am I gonna have my shit together? Because I already comparatively have like, it's so different, and like so I know that it'll always be, I'll probably at some point always be able to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just reminding yourself of that, in those times where you're like, oh my gosh, like what the heck am I doing? Like, you know. When did you start to notice your mental health kind of take a turn?
Like in a good way or a bad way?
In a bad way.
So, like I said before, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and that's hereditary. Like a lot of mental illnesses are. My dad has it. And so my dad I have a very severe case of it. My dad has a very severe case of it. My dad's dad, it's passed down to my father's side of the family. So my parents were really on the lookout for it when I was a kid. And it became, when I was a kid, it was debilitatingly bad. Like, I had really bad separation anxiety. I was very anxious. I thought I was going to die all the time. Like, it was so, I started to really, my OCD really kind of surfaced when I was like 6. And then that was a big battle for like 4 years, and then I would like be okay, and then when I went to high school it kind of came back again. And I'm just speaking, I have anxiety and I have OCD. I'm not sure about like other illnesses, but it's very like, depending on what's going on in my life, if I'm like in a really bad place in my life, if I'm not getting sleep, if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm going through something that's already distressing, my OCD is like, like, oh, hey, like, what's up? Like, we're back. So yeah, since I was like 6, and then I've really gotten a handle of it probably just in like the last 4 years. I think I've really been able to like really take a hold of it and have it work for me and live with it and not feel so ashamed of it, because I'm not. Because I also understand that is just as much a part of who I am as like the color of my eyes. And I'm not ashamed of the color of my eyes, and I can't do anything about that either. I could buy blue contacts, but that would be fucking annoying and expensive, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, now I feel like I have more of a handle on it, and I've accepted it as a part of who I am, and I've grown to, not feel ashamed of it anymore. Yeah.
What do you think that your race has to say about you?
That my who?
Your race.
My race? Like, what do I think white people have to say about me?
No, what do you think that your race is skin color? Yeah.
I'm not really sure what, like, the majority of white people think about me. What is I grew up very, very privileged. I think that I have been taken a lot more seriously in regards to my mental health because of the color of my skin. I think you are ignorant and naive to think that being a white person has not facilitated a lot of things in your life. So I know that. So I think, whereas I've struggled and my mental illness has definitely caused a lot of pain in my life, I know that I have always been given the benefit of the doubt. It's always been de-escalated. I've always been given a lot of comfort and a lot of care. And I think, obviously, a lot of that has to do with the color of my skin. So I have never, ever, and I don't think anyone has, I've never, ever felt like it has done me a disservice to be a white person, ever. I'm like, that never really has affected me badly. So.
What about your gender?
I think, I'm a woman, and I've always felt very comfortable in the label of being a woman. I've never had any kind of I've always fit very well, I think, into that label. And I think it's a universal experience as a woman that I definitely have had a lot of awful things happen because of that. So that's been difficult. I've been, and I don't know, this is like a trigger warning, but I've been raped and I've been assaulted, and I walk through the world very differently because I'm a woman, and there are lots of things that I don't do that I would love to do because I'm a woman, and I have my backup all the time. I was actually we have this customer who he asked me out 6 months ago, and I said no. But he comes in every day almost, and will sit and will stare at me for 3 hours. and gets 1 cup of coffee and like that's it. And I think there's this feeling when you're in like any kind of customer service industry too, you're like, well, I'm just like, it's fine. And I think as a woman too, it's always like, well, I'll just be polite. I'm just going to be polite. And that's conditioned, but it's also like, that's how I'm going to survive this interaction is by being polite. And it takes such a toll on you. And like, I mean, like, I just don't, there's so many times where I think like if I wasn't in this body, like how much more I would feel like I could advocate for myself, not because I would be more confident, but because I wouldn't be afraid of getting hurt by advocating for myself. And so that's I've had a lot of issues with like men I've dated where they don't understand that, like if I'm getting hit on or something, or if someone says something lewd to me, they're like, why don't you just say something? It's like, but you don't fucking understand. I will never be able to explain to you that like it is not that easy. Like you can't just like say something because I don't want to get like stabbed. You know? It's like, oh, it's fucking crazy. It's super fun.
You mentioned earlier that there are things that you want to do, but you can't. What are those things, if you don't mind telling me?
I want to hike the Appalachian Trail by myself. That's something I read. The Cheryl Strayed book, Wild, and she hiked the Pacific Crest Trail by herself. And I was planning on doing that right before COVID happened, and then obviously I was like, put that on hold. I just like, I don't think I can do that. Not because I don't think I would feel safe. I think I would maybe be willing to risk that, but my family would never let me do that because it's like I live by myself in a studio apartment. This is my entire apartment. It's super tiny. And I already don't feel super safe sleeping here with like a bolt on my door and like a little lock at the top because like I am a woman who lives by myself. So I can't imagine being a woman who is by myself sleeping in a tent 500 feet from a freeway in the middle of nowhere. But if I was a man, I just wouldn't, I don't think I would ever even think about that. I'd just be like, fuck, you know, I kind of want to like, go camping by myself for 3 months. And I would never even think like, oh, I hope I don't get killed. Like, you're fine. It was interesting. I was like reading about how to prepare for a through hike, which is what it's called when you like hike the entire trail. If you're a woman and you are by yourself, and it was saying, you know, if you're posting anything on social media, don't post a picture until 3 days after you've been there, because you don't want people to like know where you are, because they'll know you're alone. And that just like fucking broke my heart. I was like, are you insane? Like, I have to like try to like, oh my god, like, oh yeah, I would do shit like that. I would like go backpacking across Europe like by myself or with like my girlfriend, like anything like that. But like I said before, I just live with my back up all the time. And it's a universal experience. I walk with like my keys in between my fingers, and I check under my car before I get inside, and I cross the street if a man is walking too close behind me, and I pretend to be on the phone with my mom, you know? It's just like, yeah, it's just wild. I can't even conceptualize what it would be like to not live that way. Yeah, wild.
Right. Thank you for your honesty. I just like love it. Like, I think like a lot of things like, well, personally I haven't thought about, but also like I know that people like my age wouldn't even think about like you know, like for me personally, I have like sometimes like these ideas, like for instance like this interview, like I'm like I just want to like do like big things, and I just want to like make things happen, and like I, you know, like that whole like what's it called, tiny house thing. Like I just want to like have a tiny house and like travel across the country. Like I had this thing where like I wanted to like travel across the United States after I graduated, but then like putting things into perspective, and like really like thinking about like the details, you know, like it's really helpful, and I think other people will like really appreciate it. So, thank you.
Yeah. Oh my God, of course. I try to be as honest as I can about as much as I can. I think it helps me live much more authentically. And also I want people to feel as comfortable as they can around me. So I personally really try to like always be speaking my mind, always be sharing things. I try to talk about my mental health all the time. Just because I wish that someone when I was like 8 years ago had been like, oh yeah, I have OCD, and like I just had a fucking panic attack. Like, isn't that crazy? And I would have been like, oh no, you know. So I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, of
I
course.
try to live that way as much as I can.
Yeah. I think like also like what a world we have come to. Like, although we're in a pandemic, I mean, the media and like mental health, like, honey, like we're out here. So. Moving on, what are some misconceptions that people have about you based on your race, gender, or mental health? We could also break those up if you want to.
Misconceptions based on my race. I don't know if I've ever felt judged because of my skin color. I don't know of a time where I ever felt like that was why someone was thinking of me differently than I wanted to be thought of. Which is, I've never thought about that before, which is so telling of how like wild it is to like be a white person and just truly never even be aware of the color of your skin. It's just like, you know, it's just like check on the fucking SAT, and like that's literally the only time I've ever been like, oh, I guess I am a white girl. Like that's crazy. So yeah, I don't think I've ever felt misperceived or misconceived because of my skin color. My gender, I think I am often thought of as being overly emotional. I feel very invalidated a lot of the time because I'm a woman or like a bitch. Whenever I advocate for myself, even around other women who maybe, which I understand is totally just a byproduct of feeling suppressed and not heard, and so you just kind of, you either try to rebel against it or you fall underneath it. But I find myself always being like, am I being like a dick? Or am I just speaking my mind? And I have been told that I'm too much, or I talk too loud, or I should be nicer, or I should be more polite, or I should be quiet. And I think a lot of people think I'm like really fucking loud and like probably a little self-centered, but I just like do not subscribe to this idea that I need to feel like shit about myself. I just don't do that. I did that for a really, really long time, and I dated a lot of really shitty guys who made me feel terrible. And I just, like, don't live that way anymore. And if people perceive me as being a narcissist, sick. Like, I do not give a fuck. I would rather love who I am and have people think I'm, like, shitty than, like, hate who I am and have me fit inside people's little thing. So that was, what was the last thing you said? You said race, gender, and my mental illness?
Yeah, mental health.
There's a lot of stigma around mental health, period, and I think when you're vocal about it, like, it's very easy for you to get criticized or for people to make judgments about who you are. With OCD in particular, there's a lot of stereotypes that come with that because it's very misrepresented in regards to, like, media. And of course, like, the way that it's shown in media, that is aspects of OCD, but you know, like with like being clean or like checking things a bunch of times. Like I totally do those things, but OCD is like so much more than that, and it's very hard. And I think this applies to any mental illness. It's very hard to empathize or sympathize with it if you haven't experienced it, because it is just a totally different way of your brain working. Like, the way I try to describe it to people is, like, my brain is, like, split in half. there's an irrational part and a rational part, and both of them are just as loud. So I don't know what is actually true. Like if I, go to like check my door because I'm afraid that it's unlocked, and I lock it and then I walk away, I like hear half of my brain be like, I don't know if you really locked the door. And then the other half of my brain's like, bitch, you locked the door. But they're both as loud. So how am I supposed to know? So wouldn't I rather like go check again just to make sure versus like going to sleep and then someone breaks into my apartment and I die?
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of stereotyping that comes with OCD, and it's a lot more deep rooted, and it's very frustrating. And I think that because you are aware that it's an irrational thought or that it's an irrational compulsion, and that is what makes OCD so hard, because you have a mental illness and you know that it's not real. Like, that feeling is not real, but you have to do it. Like, and I get so fucked up, like, with shit like that. So I think, like, whenever I say, like, oh, because I'm very vocal, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I have OCD. And then I know immediately people are like, oh, so, like, do you wash your hands a bunch? It's like, well, I mean, sure, but, like, there's also a million other things.
Yeah.
It doesn't always manifest the same for each person, like a lot of other mental illnesses. It's different for each person. All of us, our brains all look different. So, yeah. Did that answer that? I feel like I just talked for like 5 minutes. Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
What about, you kind of already touched on this, but, like, what has somebody said, like, in ignorance towards your mental health?
Well, I dated this absolute, like, dumpster truck fire of a man for, like, 4 years. And he was a lot older than me. And so I think he felt like he had a lot of agency over who I was, or, like, what was real to me and what was valid for me. And I remember, like, when we like had been dating for like a year, and I had been very vocal from the jump, like, because I try to like tell people that I'm romantically involved with I have OCD, not for them but for me. So I know, like, hi, like, I'm gonna need you to like be supportive, and like you need to like read a fucking book, because like this is it's just like if I had diabetes, it's just like if I had like cancer. Like, you need to know who I am and, like, what I'm going through and what's going on with me. And he, like, never cared about it. And I remember one time I had like, a panic attack. And he said, I said, oh, it's just my OCD. And he was like, yeah, but, like, I don't know if you actually have that. Like, have you ever been, like, diagnosed? And I was like, well, yes. I have been. But I hadn't been diagnosed since I was like 7. So I made an appointment with a therapist just to like have her be like, hi, yes, you have OCD. So I could like go back to my shitty fucking ex-boyfriend and be like, hi, I have OCD. Like, will you be nice to me now? Like, and he still didn't believe I did, but he's the worst person alive. But yeah, I think it's easy to dismiss something you don't understand. And if you're not a person who leads with empathy or understanding, you're never going to understand, and you're not really going to care. So it's like a litmus test for me, almost, like, with people, because if I ever was involved with someone and they ever said anything like that to me again, I'd be like, okay, like, you're fucked up, like, I'm good, I'm gonna bounce.
Yeah.
So yeah, just shit like that, like, I said it before, just like misconceptions, like judgments based off of ignorance or just like not wanting to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like you were stuck in a cycle and that you were not going to like overcome or like recover?
Yeah, yes. I call it my mental breakdown, which was like 3 years ago. I was So like I said, my OCD and me personally goes like this. And like I had been at a high point for a very long time, and I was visiting my now ex-boyfriend in Chicago because he was living there for a little bit. And I had, the way OCD happens is you have manifestations. So it's like obsessions and compulsions. And I had this, do you know what like dissociating is? Okay, so that was a new one for me. I had never had it before. And I'm good, like now if my OCD comes back, I'm like, oh, that thing where I feel like I can't breathe, that thing where like I have to move my left finger 12, like whatever. And I've done it all and I've gotten over it, but I had a new one. And I hadn't had a new one since I was like 12 years old. And I was 21. And I was with him. And I was so terrified because I was so out of my depth, and I was alone, and I was in a place I had never been before, and I wasn't near my family. And he just was so cold and awful and dismissive and cruel to me about it, which made it so much worse. And I completely regressed after that. Like I flew home, and I was living in New York City at the time, and it was like I was catatonic in my life. Like my mental health just probably the lowest point of my entire life. Like I could not leave my apartment. Like I was probably in like a panic attack for like a solid week. Like it just never left. And I remember I made an emergency appointment with my therapist, and I walked 100 blocks because I like had to keep moving. And I got to her office, and I was in my pajamas, and I hadn't eaten. And this is also like a trigger warning, but I suicidal, and I had never been suicidal in my life, which is such a fucking blessing to me that it happened when I was 21 and not when I was 11.
Oh yeah.
But I had never felt that way before, and I remember being like, oh, I understand why people kill themselves. Like, because if this is what my life is going to be like, if I'm going to be in this much distress and this much pain, then I don't want to fucking be alive.
Yeah.
And my therapist, like, wrote down the phone number of the suicide hotline and was like, you need to, like, book a bus ticket, and you need to, like, get the fuck out of here, and you need to go home. So that day, I got a bus from New York to Virginia, like, 3 hours later, and I went home, and I stayed home for a month. And that's when I started taking Zoloft, and I had a Xanax prescription, and I spent like the first 2 weeks of the month I was home, like laying on my couch, and I didn't shower, and I couldn't move because it was like, I felt like everything had just been like pulled out from under me. And I gave myself a month, and I was like, on Halloween, you have to go back to New York. Because if you don't go back, you're never going to go back. Like, you can't stay in Virginia. You can't sleep on your mom's couch. Like, you have to get it together. And so I, like, went back, and I brought my dog, and I kept a Xanax in my pocket for 3 months just in case I had a panic attack. And I started seeing my therapist regularly. But that was, like, I think it was probably, like, the hardest moments of my life. Because, like I said, I had never felt that low before, and I had never felt that out of control of my mental health. But also now it's such a beautiful thing to think about, because I'm totally fine now, and I gave myself the time and the space, and I took it seriously, and I was validated by my therapist, and I was validated by my mother, and I was able to get through that. So now I can look back at it and be like, holy fuck, like, I'm gonna be totally okay. Because, like, it's never gonna be that bad again, ever. And if it is, I know it will be okay. And that's why you had asked me, like, what is my thing I like, that means a lot to me, or like a quote. And it's this quote that, like, peace is an inevitable fact. Like, there is no scenario at any point in anyone's life where at some time you will be able to be okay. That is a guarantee. At some point in your life, you will be able to sit down and breathe and be like, I'm fine. There's no situation where that's not going to happen. And I really try to really lean heavily on that, because I know, like, I was in the worst moment of my entire life, and, like, now I look at it and it's like a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, like, I thought I was gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, thank God, you know, I'm okay, and I was surrounded by people who helped, and I broke up with that guy, and you know, I'm all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, like the couple of questions I was gonna ask, like you kind of already answered, but it was like, what would you tell yourself now that you've overcome, and some things that have got you to where you are now, some things that you couldn't do before that you can do now, and then, like, in this present moment, like, are you holding on to anything that you would like to let go of?
Right now, I feel like I'm probably the best I've ever been. Obviously, I think that there's always room for me to be better.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm giving myself the validation, the internal validation, and, like, that I need. And yeah, really, after I broke up with that guy last March. Fuck, wow. And that just was kind of like it for me. After that relationship ended, I really never will be living that way again. And I don't say negative things about myself. I don't surround myself with people who make me feel bad about myself. I don't surround myself with people who say negative things about other people. Mm. Like, my best friend in my entire world is my best friend, and she has never once made a comment about my body, her body, or anyone's body. Like, ever. And that I've never met someone like that. Like, she just won't do it. And it's not even something she chooses. It's like, I do not comment on people's bodies. Like, I don't do it. She's like, it's not anything important to me. Like, it doesn't matter to me at all. And that's amazing. And, you know, I speak up for myself. And it's been a really great, like, I guess, year and a half for me. So I think there's always things to let go of. I have a lot of, like, pain, and I have trauma in my life that I need to work through and I need to process. And I think that's going to take a while. And I don't feel the need to rush through it, because I don't think you're really working through it if you're rushing through it. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm just trying to live as authentically as I can and be, like, the kindest version of myself to other people and to myself. Mm. So yeah, I'm sure there's shit I need to let go of, and I'll probably think of it after I hang up. But yeah, that kind of answered your question, maybe.
Yeah. So what are some things that you're grateful for, having gone through what you've gone through?
What are some things that I'm grateful for having gone through?
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for my past relationships, because they have changed the way that I value myself. It's hard, and for a long time, I was like, God, I wish that this never happened. And I mean, like, for sure, I wish it never happened, but I know that it helped me really figure out who I am and how I want to be treated and how I want to treat other people. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that, I did this. I'm an actor. That's what I do for a living. And I did this contract, and it ended really badly. And then I broke up with my boyfriend, and I moved home, and I was only supposed to be home for a couple of months. And then I, started working at this coffee shop, and it has become, I have the address tattooed on my arm. It's become, my home, and the people who run it like is the man who runs it and his wife are like my parents, and I don't have a dad, and he's become my father figure in my life. And I remember he came and saw a show I did here actually right before COVID happened. But it was like it was a professional production. It was the most money I've ever been paid for a show. And I was so nervous when he came, and I was so nervous, and I've been doing this professionally since I was like 7 years old, and I don't get nervous anymore, ever. And I remember like I could not get my shit together, and I like did my first number, and I was the lead, and I did my first number, and I came off stage, and I was like, why the fuck am I still so nervous? Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Did I have too much coffee? Like, what's going on? And I remember realizing like, oh, it's because my dad is here. And I haven't had a dad in like 5 years. And I'm so nervous because like my dad is here. And that was like such an amazing moment for me. And I told him about it, and we like cried, and like it was so beautiful. And so, I mean, like my life kind of went to shit, and I moved home, but I'm like so glad my life went to shit because it's been like the most incredible year and a half. I think that we don't have any control over the things that happen to us, and I don't necessarily think we have any control of how we react to those things a lot of the time, but I think we do have control over how it dictates the rest of our life. And I have had a lot of fucked up things happen to me. Everyone has. Everyone's gone through some really awful shit that I wish they didn't have to go through. But I try really hard to become softer and better in spite of the things that have happened to me. And it's allowed me to have a lot of empathy for everyone else, because I have not been the kindest person when I've been going through things. You know, like I look back at a lot of the way I've acted, or things I've said, or things I've said about other people, and it's, I don't like that. And so, but I know I'm a good person, and I know that I am trying to always be a better person, and I know that the reason why I was doing that is because I was in pain. And so I try really hard to look at people and have a lot of empathy, because you don't know what's going on with people ever. Even like people that you think you know everything about them, like you don't. And I just wish that people had been softer and kinder to me when I had been going through those things. So I'm grateful for what's happened, because it's really pushed me in a really strong sense of empathy for other people. And it takes a lot. And I mean, it's a balance, because like you're not gonna like shit on me, and I'm not gonna be okay with it. But I just try to understand. I don't think it justifies anything, but I try to understand where people are coming from, and just like be kind. Yeah. It's so much easier to be kind. It like really takes nothing. It's so hard to be mean. It takes so much fucking energy to be mean to people. It's so easy, and it's so freeing to just be kind to people. So yeah.
Love it. So last question: how do you feel now, having done the whole interview process? Reflecting, all that stuff.
I feel like a little emotional, just because I think that happens whenever you talk about yourself for a long time. I don't think we get the opportunity to talk about ourselves very much, not for like 45 minutes. I mean, it's also, it's interesting whenever you have to kind of like sit down and talk about your life pragmatically, or like your mental illness, or your relationships. It's so illuminating as to like how much has happened. And you know, it's easy to be like, holy fuck, like, yeah, I guess that did not happen that long ago, and like look at where I am now. Like that's kind of fucking dope. And fuck, I wish like, you know, 13-year-old me could like listen to this and, you know, be like, oh, okay, you're all right, and you dyed your hair, and you're okay, you have tattoos, and you have a dad again, and it's all fine. So I feel good. It's always good to talk, and like I said before, I really do try to be as honest as I can in my life, because I think it helps people, and I want people people to feel like they can talk. And like, God, if I could like sit down with everyone I love and have them talk about themselves for 45 minutes, I would. And I would probably like hold their hand and cry the whole time and like make them a fucking necklace after. Like, I think that it's good to be honest, and it's good to share the parts of yourself that you think are ugly, because they're not. You know, you just keep them in shadow inside of yourself, and it's easy to create a narrative about what they look like. But when you just like let it out for a sec, it's really something that a lot of people have, and it's uniting, and it's amazing to see how much people can like relate to things that I've gone through, and how much when people open up to me, how much I can relate to that. And so I feel good. I think it's always good to talk about things, especially hard things and things that I feel shame about, and because there's nothing to be ashamed of. And I think that's always good to remember. And I hope that, you know, we can all get to a point where we can be accepting of each other and don't feel like we have to hide things because we're afraid of how to be perceived.
Oh, sorry.
You know? It's like, you're pretty, unless, I mean, I don't know, like, you have to do something really fucking awful. But I'm sure there are a lot of things that we feel shame about that other people also feel shame about.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can share that, you don't have to feel ashamed anymore, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. You know? So yeah, I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel great.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh my God. Thank you for reaching out to me.
Yeah,
I can't believe it. I'm
course.
shocked. I was like, I mean, okay, like, sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, like, from the bottom of my heart, like,
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
I appreciate it. Are you kidding? Thank you. Oh my God.
Yeah, this really, like, touched my heart. Like, I didn't really know what to expect, but I definitely, you know, set a bar.
Good. Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
What a nightmare. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, God, shut the fuck up.
No.
I can't anymore.
Ah, dude, I love it. But, yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day, and if you need to cry, let it out, girl.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
You know my Instagram about each other. We're good now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Taylor. It was
Yeah,
so
of
great talking to you.
course. Oh my gosh, I just realized that's so funny. Like, we have the same name. Isn't it so weird when you say a name? Like,
Yes.
Dude.
It's so strange. Oh my God.
But thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.